Wow, it's crazy that Armen is out of UFC 311. I can't believe he just dropped out of the main event against Islam Makhachev. Now, apparently he seriously messed up his back, which is insane. Now, Money Moicano is stepping up to replace him and face Islam, which sounds just wild. It sounds insane. It also looks like Moicano's fight against Beneil Dariush has been cancelled because of this. And I'm not gonna lie, this feels like a huge step down compared to what we were originally supposed to get, man. And honestly, for a minute there, I thought maybe Volkanovski was about to step in. Then you had Diego Lopez saying that he wanted to step in too, which makes sense. He's a featherweight, and it's easier for a featherweight to make 155 than for a lightweight to cut down even further. I mean, there's no way Charles Oliveira could cut to 25 or 30 pounds in just a few hours. That's just insane. What I don't get is why the UFC didn't have a backup fighter ready. They usually do this for these championship main events. This is Islam versus Arman, the first pay-per-view of the year. You would think they would have somebody on standby. Like, why not a Charles Oliveira, a Max Holloway, a Justin Gaethje, or even a Dan Hooker? Any of those guys could have stepped in if something happened. And let's be real, Arman missed weight before, so it's not like something that's shocking, you know? I'm just surprised they didn't have a backup plan. It's such a bummer though, because Arman versus Islam was shaping up to be a really good fight. Arman's been on such a roll, and this was his chance to prove that he belonged on top. It sucks that we're not getting that matchup now. You know what though? I honestly think the back injury might be low-key cap. I'm leaning towards Arman missing weight instead of actually hurting his back out of nowhere. Like, how do you randomly get a back injury 10 hours before the weigh-ins? Regardless, Moicano now has the opportunity to do one of the funniest things ever tomorrow night. I don't think he's gonna beat Islam, but my god, it would be an absolute spectacle if he did. In fact, it would be awesome, but I'm not counting on it because honestly, I don't think Moicano is as good as some people hype him up to be. Now, don't get me wrong, he's absolutely a legit top 10 guy. And yeah, his performance against Benoit Saint Denis was incredible. But let's be real, the guy has some major defensive flaws. We've seen him get caught on the feet so many times by fighters like Jalen Turner and Rafael Fiziev. Now, you might say, well, those guys are great strikers, and yeah, they are. But listen, buddy, Islam Makhachev's counter-striking is absolutely deadly. This is the same guy who outclassed Charles Oliveira on the feet. The same guy who outboxed Dustin Poirier. And yeah, you can argue that because of the takedown threat. But still, it's a real weapon in Islam's arsenal. Like I said, Moicano's got some big defensive flaws. And you can't really ignore them when you look at his fights. For one, the dude barely moves his head. Like, his head movement isn't there. It's almost non-existent. Instead, he just relies on his guard to block punches. And yeah, that works sometimes, but it leaves him wide open for hooks and counters. Now, Islam, his counters are on another level. We're talking about a guy who dropped Charles Oliveira clean and outboxed Dustin Poirier, two of the best strikers in the game. He's so good at timing those counters. And not just that, Moicano has the takedown threat in the back of his mind, which just makes it even harder to deal with. So against someone like Moicano who just doesn't really move his head, that's just asking for trouble. It's a bad matchup, plain and simple, dude. And look, man, another big issue with Moicano is how much he overcommits. He overextends on his punches and rushes into exchanges like he's trying to force a finish. We've seen this blow up in his face before. Remember, like I mentioned earlier, his fight with Rafael Fiziev. Fiziev, who's an absolutely killer on the feet, just tore him apart because Moicano just walked right into his range. And that's crazy. And you know what's the other crazy thing is? He still hasn't fixed it. In the Jalen Turner fight, he got caught because Jalen Turner caught him clean in exchanges for the same reason. He doesn't set up his shots carefully and leaves himself wide open. And let's be real about his chin. I'm not saying that Moicano has a glass chin or anything, but he definitely doesn't take shots well. Look at what happened when he faced the Korean Zombie. TKZ just landed clean, and that was it, man. It was just over, man. And if he gets caught like that by the same guys, imagine what happens when he faces Islam with his insane accuracy. But honestly, his biggest weakness might be his footwork. He has the habit of backing up in straight lines when he's under pressure, and that's just a recipe for disaster. Against top fighters like Fiziev took advantage of. TKZ took advantage of it too, and Islam is gonna eat that alive. All of this together is exactly why I originally picked Beneil Dariush to beat Moicano in the first place. Beneil would have exploited all of these flaws: footwork, head movement, chin, everything. And look, I'm not buying what Moicano is selling here. He's a solid fighter, don't get me wrong, but he's got too many holes in his game to hang with someone like Islam. It's just not realistic in my opinion. And look, I get it, Moicano is a beast offensively when it comes to his top control. We all saw how he dominated Benoit Saint Denis when he took him down and absolutely worked him. The guy's grappling when he's on top is just next level, no doubt about it, but defensively, that's where he has some struggles. Remember when RDA grappled him? That fight really showed some of the gaps in his defensive wrestling, and honestly, he hasn't faced anyone quite like Islam. Look at RDA, a solid grappler, but Islam is on a whole different level. And yeah, I know he looked great against BSD, but let's be real, BSD is more of a wrestler than a true grappler. It's just not the same kind of challenge. Islam's control, his transitions, and the way he mixes in his submissions is just a complete different beast in my opinion. Alright, so here's how I see the fight going. I think Islam is going to beat Moicano by wearing him down on the feet, dropping him, and then locking in a submission. Kind of like how he beat Charles Oliveira. I guess the difference here is that Moicano probably won't be as aggressive as Charles was. Charles kind of ran into some shots, you know, while Moicano is more likely to hang back, stay in the center of the octagon, and try to use his reach. He's not going to take as many risks in this fight, I don't think, but that actually might play into Islam's hand. Alright, but if Moicano was going to win this fight, which let's be honest, I don't really see happening, but if I had to come up with the game plan for him, here's how I think it would have to go. First off, he's got to keep it standing. Moicano has to use his reach, and if he can stay at range, he might be able to make it tricky for Islam to close the distance. He needs to work his jabs, throw in some kicks, and just make it super frustrating for Islam to get inside. The key is to stay disciplined, no wild exchanges, no overcommitment, just clean technical striking to win the round. Second, and this is huge, he absolutely cannot back up in straight lines. That's where Islam thrives. You back up to the fence, and boom, that's where you should get the takedown and dominate. Moicano has to stay in the center of the octagon, use lateral movements, which I don't see happening, and avoid getting pinned. If he lets Islam back him up to the cage, it's pretty much a wrap. Now, if Islam does get him down, and let's be real, it's probably going to happen, Moicano's jiu-jitsu has to come in play. He's dangerous off his back with slick submissions, and if he can stay active, throwing up triangles, arm bars, or even just creating some scrambles, it might make it harder for Islam to settle in and control him. Even if he doesn't catch Islam in a submission, just making him work could pay off in the later rounds. But here's the thing, do I actually think Moicano's gonna win? Honestly, no. Like in theory, he could, but the odds are heavily against him. Islam is just too good everywhere. He doesn't leave openings, and his skill set is so well rounded that it's hard to see Moicano finding a real path to victory. The problem is that Islam just doesn't give you any room to breathe. Once you get down, his control is insane. Even top level grapplers can't do much against him. And on the feet, Islam's striking has improved so much, and when you add the takedown threat, it makes it even harder to deal with. So yeah, I can sit here and say, oh yeah, Moicano should do this or that, but honestly, it's easier said than done. Islam is just on a different level right now. For Moicano to win, Islam needs to make a mistake. And let's be real, that's just not very likely, dude. Overall, I just see Islam finishing it early, but hey, at least we got the co-main event and feature fight to look forward to. It's still a great card overall, just a little bit disappointing, but those are just my thoughts. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comments down below, and if you enjoyed the video, please leave a like, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and like always guys, I'll see you guys on my next one.